Welcome to Grover Load. In this episode of 20 Tech Topics, let's go through some of the news that happened this week. Let's start off with Windows because that's always a fun topic to go through. This is actually some good, interesting news coming out of Microsoft here, which is they're working on, they're tooling with trying to do some security patching, more or less hot patching. So you don't have to do the reboot. Now, this is only in Enterprise Windows 11 right now, or being tested in Windows 11 Enterprise right now. Hopefully, this also comes to Home and to Pro, at least Pro. I do normally use Pro, but this is something that Microsoft, I feel, should have had for a while, being able to hot patch the OS with some security updates and maybe only require a reboot in the OS, once every 3 months, 4 months, something in that range, which is way more reasonable, especially if you are using it on an enterprise side of things. Microsoft, could have probably has been working on this. Probably is kind of hard. I get the reboot side now. Microsoft could argue, you know what, our OS reboots anyways every other day because we have blue screens of death. But that's besides the point. Uh, we'll finally figure it out. We'll be able to patch. Well, you're just going to reboot anyways because we're going to crash it. So I know that's not always the case, but Microsoft has had. I've had my trying times with sometimes a Microsoft install. So yeah, I like where they're headed with this. I think it's a natural progression and something that Microsoft should have done a while ago. Microsoft, I want to stay on the Microsoft topic because this is just kind of short-sighted, I think, in their side. So there was an article on NeoWind, and all these articles are going to be video cards, NeoWind, WCCF Tech. There'll be a PC World 1 in here too. You can be able to go and check out, and I highly recommend go check out those sites because they do have some good articles every week. But Microsoft has, feedback hub, and they welcome user feedback. I am part of the insider program. If you want, you can be part of the insider program too. Give your feedback on things, and uh, yeah, I think that a lot of people are willing to do that. Now, one thing I don't agree with is in all of this, Microsoft had said that if they just relied on user feedback, they would have never gone and seen the huge, changes that they made, like modernized design, something to make it special. I actually disagree. There's been a lot of users out there that have created some amazing Windows concepts. I think those are even more special than what Microsoft's Windows design have. And even the Windows 8 stuff wasn't really a special design. They kind of go on to mention some of those uh, roots. While I use Windows 8, it was fine. I got around with it. I like some of the stuff with, how they were working things with the tiles. I think those were really, updates and stuff were innovated. I wish that they would have had that more in a start screen type of look. Kind of what they went to with Windows 8.1 more. And, and eventually Windows 10, and then they screwed up with Windows 11. But those innovation designs of what you could have been able to do were some of the concepts. Now, your user feedback, while you could have had something with user feedback come through and people could have submitted these designs, right? And you would have had them, you'd have had something special. I think what happened there is that so many people are caught up with trying to just fix Windows to make it a solid operating system. Like myself, sometimes, I look at features and I would like features, but more importantly to me is making sure the OS is stable enough and it works all the time. So you got to do this balance. And if you really wanted user feedback for designs, you would have had it, Microsoft. There's plenty of people out there that would have done this and would have been just satisfied with it. So I don't know what Microsoft's kind of doing there, but I think they're a little bit short-sighted in that. Now, continuing on the Microsoft side of things, the Microsoft, is still going through and trying to avoid you from creating a local account, especially if you don't have internet. You got to be able to connect, be always connected. Just some not thinking, right? Nobody's thinking in that division where they're trying to get this out and having a setup, getting rid of some bypass NRO. I mean, you will go check out Chris Titus Tech's video. He did one of how it is now actually easier to do the bypass for out-of-box experience for the local user, which is really cool. And I do plan to do this. Microsoft has another um, out-of-box experience bypass, which is kind of pretty close to Chris Titus Tech's and what he did. He did a good job. His video is a lot simpler than what Microsoft is kind of go do. Go find his video and follow that. I would recommend that than some of the Microsoft's official side of things. So a cool little thing that came out was a retro style benchmark or retro benchmark from Windows 95. Crystal Mark Retro is out, and that's kind of was just I wanted to throw that out there if you were interested in that. That's it was kind of interesting. Now, the other side of things here, what we got from Microsoft is Copilot plus PCs. You know, we've been waiting for the features. If you had Intel or AMD systems that had Copilot plus features and that the hardware supported it, Microsoft's now allowing that lock to be open for you. You know, they're gating features. I hate gated features. If your hardware supports it and you're gating it just because you want time exclusivity for these, you know, features, you know, they want to sell their Qualcomm PCs, right? They want to get a higher return rate on those Qualcomm PCs. But now they're starting to, you know, they're turning on all these features. Microsoft did have some AI stuff this week. You know, something maybe I'll go through. You know, they talked about some things. I don't know how interested people are in the AI side of things rather than complaining about it. It just seemed to me that a lot of users now and uh, they're not as interested in. Microsoft just took so long to get this out. We're a year out, and while recall is I think still going to be kind of a disaster, there nothing's really kind of hitting, and it's not creating a user experience that is revolutionary. And I wish Microsoft would have kind of went down that road a little bit more, but they haven't yet, and we'll see as they start adding more and more stuff where it kind of goes. So let's switch over to Intel a little bit. You know, Intel's got a new CEO. They had their vision conference, which, yeah, it was a vision. Okay, uh, I listened to some of it, but the CEO of Intel did have a good quote. I am a big believer that the best products always win. That's a pretty good quote. Not always true, right? We could go back to Beta and VHS, and it wasn't necessarily the best product. It was the product that was kind of licensed better, um, less barriers to entry, right? So there are differences in that scenario. You have to balance out. If you include barriers as part of the product, then yes. But those are, you know, I agree with the sentiment that they need to get into a position where their products are competitive enough to be able to compete with Nvidia and AMD where needed. And it's going to be a Qualcomm and ARM, and even if they're not going to use ARM chips, you know, NPUs, graphics cards, they're going to need to, you know, compete with all these companies. They're in all these markets. Now, what Intel is probably going to do is they're going to be some cutting in the company. It seems like they're going to be continuing down the path of discrete GPUs because they did have that on the slide. In what capacity is going to be another thing that we're going to have to take a look at. You know, my concern is that Intel takes too long to get competitive, and that could be, well, it takes too long to make the changes to start becoming competitive, which then puts them behind again, and I'm a little worried about that. We'll see what happens, right? With Intel, I do want the best for Intel. I really want to see them take off and be a competitive place in the marketplace again. They had this, you know, 285K, there's 200 series desktops and stuff, which just didn't deliver where even AMD, their competitor, thought, which is that's a huge disappointment. And Intel should be taking that to heart, those engineers, and saying, we can't do this again. You know, there's a rumor out there of TSMC's and Intel doing like a joint manufacturing partnership or something like that. I haven't looked too much into that because I'm kind of waiting to see what happens. But here we go with some of the opportunity that maybe is out there for Intel. And I say opportunity because I think Intel has an ability here to maybe make something interesting. I always thought that Intel's going to kind of need fabs. I thought that was kind of their secret sauce, but for so many years they just haven't been able to compete in that. Now, the CHIPS Act has, I don't know what's going on with that. And, U.S. wants to have their manufacturing, especially chips and technologies and certain things here in the United States. So how is this all going to roll out? And how much control do you want in like a joint partnership to make sure that that's a U.S. company that's controlling it as well? I'm sure there's going to be a little bit of everything here for that. So, there's a lot going on with Intel, but I really hope that Intel starts going through and saying, hey, you know what? We are going to make the best products. We're going to go after this. We're going to, you know, we're going to take on, even if it's just best segments. Let's say we're going to create good mid-range stuff where everything can compete, and then we'll go from there. Once we start being profitable again, make some high-end stuff, and we're going to start building our coffers up again rather than just hoping for the best. So I really hope that a lot of this stuff takes off. And want to touch on a little bit of AMD stuff now. We had Moore's Law is dead. He's a good leaking channel overall. Gets a lot of code names out and a lot of different slides and stuff, which is very impressive what's been going on. But he had, some of these APUs that are coming out, like Ryzen AI, Gorgon Point, and some little stuff there. It's been really impressive what's been going on, and seeing some of this. And there was another leaker. What was it? Hars KZ 5791 also been leaking some stuff here. So you're going to get some, looks like you're getting a little improvements there. Preparing, AMD has been really pushing, trying to get some of these APU type systems with a good MPU out here, and 2026 looks like they're going to do that again, trying to push that out with 12 core, RDNA 3.5, XDNA 2, putting the a little bit more tops in those chips, and they're really trying to push that mobile market a lot. They're taking advantage. It seems like they're, with how much the desktop has been moving, they're really trying to take advantage of that mobile market to see where they can get to, and it makes sense, right? AMD wants to be able to take more and more of the market share, and when your competitor's down, you got the desktop market share. Everyone wants your chips. The server market share seems to still be going and improving, and the mobile market share, where the grip that Intel had for so many years, is something that you're kind of like, okay, we can go after this. Intel's kind of hitting a little slump a little bit, even though their mobile chips are still, they're still in a range where it seems like they're still a little bit competitive. But AMD right now is, with every chip they have through the AI Maxes all the way down their stack, just seems to have something for everyone, whereas Intel, is not there yet. So let's see where it all goes, and we'll see what AMD's continue to do as they continue to push. They're also, it seems like, preparing a 97 or 9070, 97. Man, that naming scheme's just sticking with me, AMD. So it's a 9070 GRE. So instead of the XTs, they're going to have a GRE. Rumors have it as being 12 gigabyte card, and that'll be, probably, it's going to have the same. It's going to be, with the 12 gigabytes, right? You're going to be a little bit slower. Or run it, I shouldn't say slower, probably the speed of it's going to be slower, but that's not leaked yet. I think it's going to be a little bit, you might run into issues, especially if you want to go up to 4K with 12 gig frame buffer. So that could be where you run into things and become slower, because you're getting your, choppiness that we've seen on some of the reviews of other cards. Probably just AMD, probably to fill, if I had to take a guess, that 9060 is going to come in and be a little bit cheaper. They're going to try to keep that price aggressive as much as they can to keep a good margin. Probably sit there. We'll see where Nvidia comes out with that 5060 Ti. They want something in between the two that kind of closes the gap. If that 5060 Ti is much more powerful than 9060, right? They want to kind of keep that pricing gap filled. Now, there's reports that this is only going to be in the Chinese market, but we'll see, right? We've seen AMD have the GRE before and be elsewhere. So We've had CPUs blowing up, right? AMD CPUs just been blowing up, the 9800 X3D. Even Tech City, which I recommended you last week to go take a look at, he had his 5700 X3D have a little issue. And so AMD actually responded to Club 365 about that they're aware of the issues with involving the ASRock AM4 boards, failing to post, and they've been investigating with ASRock as well. So it's a memory compatibility present in early BIOS versions, and it's supposed to have been rectified in these BIOS versions. Now, ASRock has been issued guidance on the behavior and addressed the damaging CPUs. Now, this is supposed to be, only a update, the BIOS and having the latest versions, and this should be not persist in the future, but we'll see, right? This is the thing where I wanted to test out an ASRock board. I do, as I said, you're going to see this until I finally build something. There's a 5700 X3D here. I do want to build something with the 5700 X3D, or 5700. This is a 7800 X3D. Where's my brain? I don't know. This is the second thing today that I've gone and said the wrong number for some reason. But the 7800 X3D, I was going to do like an 850 board with it. Was looking at ASRock. I'm going to probably do something a little bit different there. I'm just not comfortable quite yet. I want to see some distance put between this issue and the failures. I hope ASRock gets together because it's starting to trim out what boards I like to use. And then let's see, was there something else here? Yeah, I wanted to, and on that same note about the dying Ryzens, there's been over 100 cases now. WCCF Tech kind of put this together, some lasting only an hour. That was really interesting tidbit. Just, mostly on ASRock boards. I kind of think it's a combination of two things, where sometimes the boards are just having an issue, and this may be causing it and part of the problem. And then I think the other side, there might have been something where there was a mismanufacturing flaw, and you have a flaw there. And I don't think that there's one pinned issue you could do with this, but that is where we're at. And then AMD also had an acquisition of ZT Systems, so something to improve the AI and data center area of the market. And this is something where there, as they said, it's a significant milestone in their AI strategy and for training and inference solutions, right? And they're saying this, optimize unique environments, ready to go deployment at scale based on open ecosystem approach that combines open source software, industry standards, technology, and now ZT Systems in leadership for this. So they're trying to deliver the whole package, right? You kind of see what Nvidia did, right? They're kind of delivering a system to a whole entire package. That's what AMD wants to get to. A lot of these companies want to deliver that whole entire system, and this is just another one of those things that they want to do. And we'll talk about Nvidia, and then we'll get into gaming, because I'm sure everyone wants to talk about that Nintendo Switch, because that's what I want to talk about. But we'll get to Nvidia here real quick, and then we'll get into some gaming. PhysX is releasing the full source code. This is really interesting. You've had the PhysX problems recently. Now you're going to release the full source code. Would be interesting to see if somebody created a mod or whatever else to have the translation layer from PhysX to, let's say, an AMD GPU or an Intel GPU, and you could play some of these old games with the PhysX stuff on non-PhysX hardware. That'd be pretty kind of cool to see, but I'm going to never be shy down about this at all. I like open source software. I think it's a good thing. I think that more companies should have open source software. There are models that out there of companies solely having open source software and being profitable. So I think that there's ways out there to do this, and I hope that more companies do it. So that's really kind of a good thing on Nvidia. I really like to see that. Now MSI gaming motherboard, or gaming motherboard. Here I am. There's oh, it's not a great day of remembering the numbers and everything else and words, I guess. Not motherboard, graphics card, another one melted. 5090 MSI gaming trio OC melted with a Corsair power supply. That was on video cards. Source was Reddit, and it was a Corsair SF1000L power supply. You take a actually hardcore build Zoid over actually hardcore overclocking. He has some good points. I can't disagree with him. I think that if the spec does not put that you need to basically load balance each cable where the power is coming into, it's hard to then code or go to and work with a spec that is, I think, flawed, right? So this is one of those things where I think that you're pushing so much power, you probably should have, before you combine them, make sure that you're load balancing where the power is coming from on each wire to try to prevent this as much as possible. I really don't get it. You redid the connector, and instead of making it more safe and putting it in that you had to load balance this, you forgot that part. And like PCI SIG could have made this, spec requirement even safer. It mind boggles me sometimes how these decisions are made, but that they're melting, and that's not a good thing at all. The 5060 and 5060 Ti are supposed to be going to go for $499, and then for the 16 gig, and then $399 for the 8 gig. So we'll see where the performance comes in. Gamers Nexus, if you have a chance, go take a look at their video, because they just did a good video going through all of where this 80, 70, 60, 50 classes are in performance over time to CUDA cores, or pricing for and CUDA core count, and where that's all going. They did a really good job. Also, it's slightly depressing. Yeah, you're not going to want to just stay there for, hey, Nvidia's giving us more for $1. Yeah, you're not going to get that. But Gamers Nexus did a great job in all their research as well. I do appreciate when he goes through and kind of gets that out. So, yep. One other quick thing before we jump into gaming side thing is Nvidia's trouble with selling some of their Blackwell servers. Their clients are hesitant, right? You could go market. I mean, we're hearing Microsoft go through and saying, hey, we can't go through and keep building all these data centers. I have, part of me has a question out there, and I've had it for a while. How much money can you throw at these data centers, especially AI data centers, and not have a return on investment and be okay with it? And that's where I wonder how much money, how you're being profitable and turning revenue in on these AI systems, and it looks like they're not. Now, on the gaming side thing, quick rundown here. Just be careful of malware games on Steam, right? This is one happened a couple times in the last couple weeks, and this is one that I wanted to get out there. PC World and a lot of other places had this, but you be careful what you're downloading, right? Some of these games, they try to get a game up there, make some money, and it happens to be malware. If you're one of the first ones that do this, always be cautious, especially if they're reaching out to you and be like, hey, you can download this game, it's free and everything else. Be cautious, right? Sometimes it's legit, sometimes it's not, and then then you're stuck with malware in your system, which, depending on the malware, best case scenario, you have to reformat. Well, and that's a whole fiasco. So just be aware of that. Doom, Dark Ages, right? That's in preview. Or I should say, in preview. There's some previews out of that. Looks pretty cool. I enjoy playing games, so I want to get that out there. Of course, maybe I'll get my Half-Life 3 one day. I'm going to be on that for a while. And then let's close out with the one and only, what everyone wants to talk about, which is the Switch. Now, the Switch will not be, the Switch 2, right? The Switch 2 will not be fully pre-ordered this week in the United States. Tariffs and stuff, they're assessing those. But Nintendo did go through, right? You got a little bit bigger 4K support, 4K 60, is going to have DLSS, 120 hertz at 720p. a lot of cool little stuff that they're coming out with. We'll probably see Call of Duty, other games here coming, a little bit bigger as well. Interesting, you got a micro SD slot, you got, games card as well. And the Switch 2 is supposedly going to retail for $449, which is more expensive than I thought. And this is one of those things where if, let's say with tariffs and stuff here in the United States, that goes up to maybe 500, 449. Okay, whatever, that's going to come out to whatever. Maybe they keep it the same price. I don't think that price is going to go down too much over the life cycle of this console's life. Now, Nintendo is pretty much can do whatever they want in the game console industry. They kind of go to their own beat, which is fine. They do a good job. I just wish that I could play some of those Nintendo games on something other than Nintendo products. Maybe one day that'll happen, but Nintendo seems to kind of print their own money with their consoles and some of their own games, right? So the $80 and $90 games, I think that's going to also be something to take into account. It seems like you're going to have something there, and it's going to be more and more of these games getting out and being more and more expensive. So don't, I'd expect, Microsoft and everybody else is going just excited about this because now games can be that $80, $90. Nintendo's setting it, and everyone else is going to follow for the base game. Also, Microsoft, I think, is probably jumping for joy on Game Pass in hopes that that becomes more attractive. And my guess is for the next year-ish, Microsoft will probably keep that Game Pass price the same, get more people converted into Game Pass, and then raise it a little bit. That still seems reasonable, but because it's such a good offer as games go up in price, so after all the games go up in price, right, you keep around that Game Pass price for a little bit longer, so people want to use it and jump on and get into the ecosystem so that they can keep making that revenue over and over again. Now, on the console side of price, I was getting back there. The console side of price, I really think that what you're going to see is probably $800-900 prices of consoles here in the next generation. As long as Sony's at this, I think it gives the go-ahead that the PS5 Pro for what was it, $700 was just a fine price, right? And that's just going to make, and they're selling them. So, and for the price, right, not horrible performance for the price, especially where graphics card prices are. So that next one is going to be at they'll probably keep it right underneath $1,000 because I think that might be a hard pill to bite. But this is where we are in the gaming console world. I don't like it anymore with all the pricing, but it is what it is. You're going to be seeing this more and more, I think, depending upon how everything kind of goes and is laid out, tariffs-wise, pricing-wise, and everything else until we kind of figure all this out and get through some of the choppy waters ahead. So there's, I think that there's quite a few different outcomes of what could happen, but everyone's in uncertainty, and uncertainty creates, everyone not wanting to commit to things. And I think that's where these companies are, is that they're gonna want to play off of each other, so that they get, if Nintendo does something, and I'm guessing Nintendo's gonna sell a lot of these Switch 2s, that opens the gate for shielding basically for the Sonys, at least Sonys in the world. Microsoft, I think they still can get up there. I think they're gonna have to undercut Sony at least a little bit in their console, but their handheld, they could come out with that price too at $400, and that's where Microsoft would have to be for their handheld to kind of compete with the Switch, especially if some of those games that Microsoft's making now, as they had to do when they acquired Activision Blizzard, have to go on the Switch too. So that's all I have this week in the news. A little bit longer than what I wanted to do, but we'll end it there. I do want to thank you so much for watching Gray Overload and helping this channel grow. I really do appreciate it. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe, hit the bell icon, as it really does help out the channel. And until next time, God bless.